so much for tuning in. My name is Jason Miles, and this is Revolution Podcast, coming at you from Oakland, California. And this episode that we're dropping on you guys for this lovely Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, for those of you that are patrons, is our Saturday free show, we call it. We call it the free show because we don't, after 1 hour, we don't go to the patron-only side and have our patron-only content. We just go as long as we can. This show is so much fun. I think we talked for like another hour or so after we ended the stream. Good time gossiping with Matt and David, guys that I've had on this show before BP, right before Pascal. A lot of people have come on recently, so they don't know that this show was just me for a long time. But David was an early on guest in the show. I think it's like episode 30-something. That's David Griscom's appearance on the show. First appearance on the show. And when we do shows like this where we have guys on or people on that also work in this same world, we're not the biggest fans of that kind of content because it feels like it's just, oh, this person has a lot of viewers, so let me just get them on my show and get some of their viewers. But I actually enjoy Matt and David. Definitely always enjoyed David's the Griscom Economic Minute on the Michael Brooks show. I enjoyed the fact that Michael Brooks gave Matt Leck more room to speak. So I do enjoy those guys as commentary. So it was a good time to have them on the show to, kind of have a discussion that they don't get to have. I mean, they're constantly on one side of the wall asking the questions, so hearing them respond to the questions getting asked at them that's always a lot of fun for me whenever we do shows like this. And I had an idea to try to do some sort of simulcast, but didn't know how to set it up for a while. And my big thing is I don't like a lot of the competition. It's not that making you better kind of competition. Some of it is constantly shitting on people, and I like to work with people in this podcast sphere that we're in. And I've been trying to work with those guys for a while on doing a show on the New Deal, and it just didn't work out. Maybe my plans were too grand. But there was a new feature on the program that we use. We both use the same program that would allow us to simulcast the show. And I told that to Matt, and he was all over it, and worked out well. They got a lot of people that watched the show on their end. We got a good amount of people on our end, and it was the chat was fun. And like I said, we had a good time talking some shit afterwards. I look forward to the day when we can do live shows, because I would love to do a live show in Austin with Griscom and even have Leck fly in, and of course Pascal. That'd be pretty dope. If I was going to do a live show, definitely California, but Austin would be another place I would love to do a live show. So shout out to the Left Reckoning guys, David Griscom and Matt Leck. And wherever you're listening to this show, there are links in the description to their podcast and also to Matt's podcast that he has called Literary Hangover, where he plays video games and reads books or discusses books. Matt's crazy. If you want to get in on this show live time, there's one way to do it. It's the easiest way. YouTube. doesn't cost you anything. Subscribe. There's a little bell. You click it. You get alerted whenever we do a show, a live stream. Our live stream is every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, Saturday 9 a.m. Pacific time, and I'm taking a break from the show. The show will go on with some different hosts at the end of this month, and when we come back for what we're calling the third season, if you will, there's going to be a new day added and a lot of new programming added. And I'm very excited. I don't want to say too much now because I'm still working out some of the nitty-gritty details. And we're still going to be contributing content to Zero. If you want to see some of this bonus content, the Mau Mau Hour with Pascal Robert, Movie Night with Matthew Film Guy, and there's going to be more people that are going to be contributing to Nerd Night. Oh, yeah. Then become a patron. Patreon.com/This is Revolution Podcast. We want to do another movie night. We've been back and forth on the movie. I think I figured it out, what to do movie night wise. I'm not going to say just yet. If you want to know, well, got to tune in. Patreon.com/Bitterlake Presents. Wherever you're listening to the show, there are links in the description to the Patreon, all the social media where you can watch us, talk to us. If you're a patron, you get the phone call. All right, guys, that's my cue. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for listening and getting us ranked on Apple Podcasts. I am out. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of This is Revolution Podcast. And I am your host, Jason Miles. And let me bring in my co-host, my homie, my dog, coming all the way live from Miami, Florida. He is the man you know as the one that will give you a Haitian history in less than 5 minutes. Constantly mowing the bourgeoisie. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. Haitian history in 5 minutes. I don't think I can do it in 5, maybe 20.
I think you do. I think they reduced that cut down to like 4 minutes, right? The Majority Report Haitian history, or was it a 20-minute thing?
It was 20 minutes, man. It was like 26 minutes.
I apologize. 20 minutes. If you want a 20-minute Haitian history, Pascal is your man. Haitian Revolution history, by the way.
I was reading some Haitian history this morning, actually.
See, he's always studying. And unfortunately, our brother, you know him as the black man in Maine, couldn't make it today. But we have the Turkish dude in Missouri. He is Mean Gene Bajlan.
Greetings. Also, I have to say something. Calling me the Turkish dude it's like, you know, that's like calling Pascal a Dominican, and also it's on level with the Irakistan comment. So, you know, this is
we call that consistency where I'm from, Gene.
Consistency. I would like to be known by my true name, the Irakistani person from in Springfield, the only Irakistani with my Dominican friend Pascal Robert.
Someone's ready to mom out real quick.
If I call Pascal Dominican and Gene Irakistani one more time, I will have two very different looking dudes knocking at my door to beat the shit out of me. And let's just bring in our guest today, because we have a guest that also do this podcasting live stream thing. He is the producer of The Majority Report. I believe he also produces his own show, Literary Hangover. He also is a part of Left Reckoning. He's a big fan of basketball and video games. He is Matt Leck.
Good to be back. Great applause too.
And coming from Austin, Texas, I'm having a battle with this man undercover for who can wear the baddest cowboy shirt. I'm not wearing cowboy shirts on the weekends, so he can one up me today. And he's definitely one upping me with this hat. Just to let you guys know that anyone that wears a hat like that looks like David Griscom, I usually assume they hate black people. He is David Griscom.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man. Well, I'm just basking the applause for a second. Thank y'all so much. Happy to be here.
Griscom with the Duck Dynasty hat.
No, man, this is my guru, T. Roy Cooks. He's a great meat smoker out here in Austin, Texas. Don't be weird, friends, on the internet.
Yeah. A meat smoker means something very different in England.
God damn, you asked for it. I stay away from your DMs because they're done right now. Just all you got. I know what you mean because I follow you on social media and I know how happy you are to be back in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Because he smokes a lot of meat out there, and it's kind of gets you
hungry.
It's
the coolest thing that I don't know about. That is a depressing island, I must say. I love all my friends from the UK, but the more I find about the culture, it's very tough. I have some good friends out there who are trying to barbecue out in the UK right now, and they've been asking me for advice, and I was just like, "Yes, let me see your setup." And it's the most busted, nasty, just I don't know. The Sad Island, man.
Well, in Britain, when we say barbecue, we just mean grilling. So we don't. So most British people don't kind of. I didn't understand. I was like, "What's the difference between barbecue and grilling?" But obviously, once I came to America, especially in Missouri, they take their. There is a significant difference between just grilling some meat outside, because like people just grill some burgers and sausage and they call it a barbecue. But now, from watching your Instagram, especially, David, and also because of your Instagram, every so often when I go to the bicycle shop, there's a meat smoker shop right next to it, and I go and look in, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get one of these days, David, because it looks good.
I used to know this history, but barbecue is clearly a Western, like a product of the Americas. But is it actually North America? What's the origin of barbecue? Is it South American, Latin American?
I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know about the word per se, but like at least what we do here is very, very American kind of cooking that's been going on for 300 years. I mean, like barbecue is just like people would kill a pig and they cook for a shitload of people.
Yeah, because there's a word for it actually in Haiti, but allegedly the story of the barbecue started with what we call, the French word is boucanier, or what you would call buccaneers, who were pirates. And
Wow.
yeah.
Well, according to Wikipedia, the origins of the word is from the Arawak people in the Caribbean.
Wow.
There you go. Pascal, the Dominican wins again.
So it's from the Dominican Republic.
No, here we go.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. So says the hairy Arab, Gene Boswell.
Oh, damn.
So Matt, I know you are a basketball fan. Did you watch the draft at all?
I didn't watch the draft, but I listened to about 7 podcasts where they were watching the draft live and reacting to it. Was it Thursday or Friday?
Thursday.
Okay, yeah. So I didn't watch it then, but I did see on the walk into work a whole bunch of guys in NBA polos, guys and gals in NBA polos walking into Barclays Center. And it was sort of like, I don't know if you guys played Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, but when you have to track the feds and they're all like moving, like, I felt like I saw something I wasn't supposed to see.
Oh, because they did the draft in New York.
So I'd like to have a point of order. Since we kind of like don't have a purpose for this show, let's define a purpose.
I wrote out a whole plan with these two guys. You weren't part of the conversation.
Yeah, you weren't part of the conversation.
No Dominicans allowed,
I'm
motherfucker.
taking a point of privilege. I'd like to call this show Left Podcast Guys Talk Smart Smack about the Left Podcast game. Podcast.
Just to let you know, shots have been fired.
I actually want to ask Matt something. What did you think of Jason dropping his own sound bites in on the majority report? Because I thought that was pretty funny.
I thought it was great too, and it's funny because Jason was a little bit apologetic in the DMs afterwards to make sure he didn't kind of overdo it. But but if you know Sam, like that sort of like needling is sort of that's what he loves. So it made a really good impression, and that's why
I was afraid. He was like, and by the way, never have them two niggas on again.
They invited me back. They like me. I don't know.
They made sure that like the big one.
Don't take the Negro with the glasses.
You know, it's funny.
Aggressive, but he doesn't come with instruments.
I told you what Finkelstein said when I called him. I called him the first time because Norm Finkelstein is like, we had Finkelstein on the show, David and Matt. Norm Finkelstein. It is literally our most popular show. Glenn Greenwald tweeted it out.
Amazing.
But Finkelstein, who's the homie, man? He's at the point in his life where he gives no fucks, right? I'm gonna say what the fuck I want to say. So when I call him on the phone, he goes, "Call me." Before the show, he goes, "Call me on the phone." I don't do this text thing. The number I gave you is a house number. Like that's how the email reads to me, and that's also how he talks. And so I call him on the phone, and he goes, "Who is this?" I was like, "It's Jason." He goes, "You're Jason. You're the funny guy. Gal is the learned one."
That's a really good Norman Finkelstein.
It is.
That is like
Hey, I love talking to Norman Finkelstein because he's funny as shit, and he gets mad at me because I say horrible things. And as you guys know, my private conversations are a little more non-PC.
Yo, this shout out to the sister Queen who was putting like urgent questions. This is Revolution Podcast. Can you talk about Giannis and his background as a stateless black boy to NBA star that the Greeks want to claim? I was like, God damn, what is it? The Greeks
He's from Greece, isn't he?
As Europe, he's Nigerian.
His dad is, but didn't he grow up in Greece? He speaks Greek.
Yeah, he does speak Greek.
Yeah, although I know Giannis himself was a little bit ambivalent about the Greek Freak nickname because it sort of collapsed that I mean, I'm not sure what his history was entirely. I think there's like a Disney Plus movie or something coming out about it, but I know he himself was a little bit ambivalent that it was just like Greek Freak sort of identity, especially because Greece, I think Greece wasn't great regarding his family's.
They were poor and homeless and indigent. They were like selling like stuff on the street.
Right.
Greece has I mean, it's not as bad as some other countries in the Balkans, but there's some serious racial tensions there, especially obviously as you might expect with the mass migration that has been taking place in recent years. Greece is often the first stop through which people come from the Middle East and Africa to Europe. So there's a lot of tensions there, and a lot of complaints.
And don't forget they had the Golden Dawn phenomenon there for a minute.
They did. They shut down the Golden Dawn, though. They were, busted for criminality.
As a matter of fact, talking about, listen, I have,
Well, where does Giannis's family stay? Are they all in the States now?
There's a story about that too that I wish I knew the details about, but Giannis was actually having difficulty getting them into the States, and there was some owner of the Bucks or some higher up in the Bucks had a connection to like the State Department or something and pulled some strings to get his family here. And that's another good story for someone with a little bit more of the details in. But I think I heard that as well.
I was very close to calling Coach Will because he has all the inside basketball fucking knowledge. And
you should bring Coach Will back on at some point. I like listening to Coach Will.
I'm going to bring Coach Will back on when I come back from break, when I can actually sit down with him in real life. We haven't seen each other in real life in probably like 2 years.
I was about to say this when Queen said something. One thing about, I can't. There's a little history between the Greeks and Haiti that I'll explain at another time. But I don't hate on the Greeks that much. But Greece was literally sinking refugee boats.
Yeah,
at one point in the last year, and people were like drowning. The history, by the way, is that under President Boyer of Haiti, we sent ships and resources to Greece to help fight in their independence against the Ottoman Empire. We actually helped the Greece get independent in the 1820s. Wow. From we were one of the first countries that recognized Greek independence.
Well, the refugee issue in Greece, it's basically a political football between Turkey and Greece. And, the Aegean is the front line. And, Turkey can stop the flow of refugees, but it can open the flow of refugees. And it uses refugees as a way to extort resources from the European Union. And then it acts as the kind of policeman. And when they're mad at the European Union, they're like, oh, suddenly all these people stop playing. But if you remember, there was that picture of that toddler who was dead on the beach a couple of years ago, Alan Kurdi, like a Kurdish refugee from Syria. It's utterly inhumane and brutal. But, if to remember back to the conversation we had with Maria and Kuba in the after hours the other week, this issue is only going to get worse, especially if we have the dam in Ethiopia,
the Nile River,
on the Nile River, and then some kind of economic collapse in a country of 100 million people like Egypt. This the inhuman, they're going to be sinking. They're going to be sinking a lot more boats.
Quite as kept, Gene. Even though I know you're not Turkish, but the Greeks hate the Turks. This is like a.
Well, you know what the latest thing is? The latest scandal between Greece and Turkey. There are big forest fires taking place in Turkey. And
I wanted to talk to you about that, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, the forest fires. And one of the reasons Turkey is having problem combating the forest fires is because the AKP administration has kind of gutted the emergency services, so they don't have the equipment. But the Turkish media and figures close to the government are claiming that Greece is funding the Kurdistan Workers' Party to start fires. And this is having a big effect because yesterday in the city of Konya, basically Turkish vigilantes murdered 7 Kurdish people, including 3 women, in a kind of racial ethnic pogrom. So, Turkey is the AKP's media allies is kind of trying to blame this stuff on Greece, basically blame this stuff on Greece cooperating with the Kurds, and it's pretty dark stuff. But I'll stop going on about that and let's get to our guests.
I could listen to Gene talk about this stuff as long as he wants to go. But
so, you gentlemen from the left reckoning, tell us about the reckoning of the left.
I'll let David go because he's the one who came up with that name, which I immediately liked, but go ahead, David.
It was just one of those things. I came up with the name a few years back, just thinking if I ever wanted my own project. And I like the name Left Reckoning because I like the kind of threat it implies, but also the reckon aspect too, being a kind of like Southern colloquial term. Right. So it's sort of like we're in this moment where we're sort of trying to think our way out of the problems as well, as much as we want to be fighting. To pitch for Left Reckoning for folks who are not familiar. Matt and I both sort of came up with our good friend and comrade and captain, Michael Brooks, and that work. Yeah, hell yeah. Matt's got the shirt on there. And that work was really important to us, both being like, okay, we're going to talk about American politics and how we working people can have a better situation, but we're also never going to forget that this is a international struggle. So that's basically the focus of the show is, just trying to link up working people, give them political analysis, and also make sure that everybody knows what's going on all around, because these struggles are really, really connected. And I guess specifically, like the only major difference from what we were doing at TMBS, other than obviously the personnel, with Left Reckoning is just sort of embracing, where Matt and I are from. Like I'm from Texas, Matt's from North Dakota, and making this point that, you don't have to be this kind of New York or LA cosmopolitan, individual to be very worried about what's happening in Peru and Bolivia. And like we're all in this kind of fight together and trying to make sure that we can, be covering that in our own way. And also, honestly, like if we're having fun. Like honestly, a big factor for me too was I remember when everyone was getting all worked up about the defund the police discourse last summer, and me getting really pissed off because that was happening in Austin, and Austin voted right through referendum to defund the police, right, and move the money around. And I'm not even sitting here saying about whether or not the strategy was right or if it was successful or anything like that. But it was one of those things. It was just insane to me that all these people are having this abstract argument about defund the police. And then there's a major American city that's doing it, and you never heard anybody bring it up. And it was just a realization to me that there's a lot of things happening in this country too that leftists, and specifically like left podcasts, just missed because they're all in Los Angeles or in New York City.
Now, what's really interesting, though, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jason, but shout out to Janice Graham. Janice Graham's probably like, why are all these white people on this show right now? I know Janice well enough to know that it's her first reaction is like, where are the black people? I like this podcast with the black people. Where are the white people?
Does Janice Graham count me as a person of color because of my?
She's trying to figure out. She doesn't know yet. I think she's gonna have to figure out what your nightly dinner routine is before she kind of decides whether or not you're a person of color.
Well, it's rice and kebab, so.
Yeah, it's all right. She might say, well, is he Kurdish, Arab? What's the difference here?
What is when you pull him over?
But the thing that's interesting to me about you guys and about Left Reckoning, right? And you guys just stated that, but it's going to go over people's heads. Like, you guys come from straight, like, redneck, cracker, peckerwood country, basically.
Yeah.
And you guys have left politics, right? And like what's interesting to me about Left Reckoning and the both of you is that you guys have intimate connection with Trump country and Trump people. I'm sure you know Trump people. I'm sure you may have Trump people in your family. And what I'd like to know for our audience, right, before we get into like deeper questions about like not only like your racial politics in America, but like what exactly was the radicalizing point for you guys coming out of straight up like redneck peckerwood cracker country and like developing like a left politics?
I'll start, I guess. My parents were never put up a yard sign for politics until after 9/11, and they put it up for 2004 in Bush. But I would say like they were probably generally like sort of Catholic conservative-y. I think you see the start, especially not in my family, but in relatives, you see a lot of anti-abortion politics being like, that's the question. And once that's answered, we're going to just vote for Republican for as long as, we live. But like in my own family, my parents aren't super political. So I do remember like around the time of Bush and Gore, I remember getting in an argument with a kid in class because he said that he would vote for Gore if he could vote. And I'm like, you're just doing that because your parents would vote for Gore. And I realized like after a few weeks that I was probably leaning Bush for that similar way, just knowing nothing about it. It's just like this sort of tribal thing, right? I would say the thing that radicalized me was, as lame as it sounds, or not as lame as it sounds, but it's probably common for people of my age, is the Iraq War. Comedy Central, like the Colbert and Jon Stewart stuff, but I also have been a big radio fan for I mean, as long as I could like buy a little AM FM radio. And I used to listen to KFAN, which is a sports talk radio station out of Minneapolis, but they have a bunch of old sort of like liberal type guys, and they were anti-war basically from the start. And I think that pushed me out of, and I honestly, like, everyone is pretty much conservative. There was no models in my life growing up for liberalism or leftism, definitely not. I had like one aunt that went to college, and like they're not, you know, progressive. They're like sort of like, I think the type of suburban Democrats, maybe they often vote Republican, that the Democratic Party loves right now. So it was all media driven and kind of event driven by the Bush administration. And I don't know. And I guess I started reading like Marx in college because of the financial crisis and stuff. And also, you know, I was Obama supporter in 2008, but was, you know, fluent enough in what the criticism was of what he was doing to sort of be pushed along a more left trajectory at that point.
Did you go to school up north in North Dakota?
Yeah, I went to, no, not North Dakota State. I went to Minnesota State University, Moorhead, which is right across.
Moorhead. Yeah, right
Yep.
outside Fargo. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Because I wanted to leave the state, but not very far, I guess. So I basically lived in Fargo for most of the years I went there.
It's a hip happening town.
I like it. I don't have a whole lot of cause to go back because like everybody that I met in college there is also scattered to the winds. But it was a fun little town. I
It's
like
also
the winters.
cold as shit, and you know, New York is cold, but it's not North Dakota.
I like that North Dakota cold. New York, it's like it plays with being cold, but it never really gets there.
I remember coming back home from California after being in North Dakota during the winter, and it was like 60 here. And I had on like shorts. I was like, hot. How do you guys live in this heat?
Now, David, you're from Texas, right?
Yeah.
That means that you actually know some people who own some sharecropping plantations, probably around like.
Well, I mean, so I'm from Austin, and I grew up here.
Those are liberals, man. Those...
Yeah, so I grew up in Austin, and then, but I mean, just to say, like, my life story is like I'm like come from a very working class family, and I would also like highlight the poverty too. You know, feeling housing insecurity, homelessness, all that kind of stuff, and I grew up in Austin, and, you know, obviously it was an incredible place to be a young kid, but my family ended up moving to South Carolina when I was younger. And I grew up in like Loris, North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And, you know, we were just poor folk, and it was not an easy place to grow up, if I'm being completely honest. You know, a lot of love in the family, but you know how it is. Mm-hmm. And for me, I mean, I'm just like talking about my political like awakening, right? My family was always very liberal in the sense of like, you know, you vote Democrat, all that kind of stuff. So I didn't really have I didn't have to like rebel against a conservative parent. But I remember when I was getting into high school, I was trying to figure out how to make my way in the world. And you start to think, well, it seems like all these rich folks, they see the world in a certain way, and they seem to be doing pretty well. So maybe they get it. So I had this weird kind of flirtation with, you know, Republican politics when I was in my early teens. And then I had this moment when I realized, like, well, these guys are talking shit about food stamps. That's how I eat, right? You know, these people are talking crap about Medicaid, and that's how I go to the doctor. And for me, that was like the real breaking moment. It was like, so all this shit that you get from the right wing in the South about like, oh, this is the politics of the working man, all that their politics essentially were anti-working class kind of politics. And for me, that was the beginning of my radicalization. I only was able to learn the grammar and the language later to become a socialist and a Marxist. But that was when I started, you know, looking for a different kind of answer. And I'll just say this real quick. I mean, a big part of why Left Reckoning matters to me as a project is because, I was lucky. I was, first in my family to be able to go to school. And I remember coming back and, coming back from my first year at school and talking to my friends and brothers and sisters about socialism and all this crazy ass shit I was learning about in school. And it really clicked. Right. And that was was
your accent thicker when you came back too? Like, was it like, man, y'all look, man, I found out about there's this man in March.
This German fellow over there who's saying that we own all the shit that we create.
Check this out, man. You wouldn't believe this shit, man. Check this out, man. We've been lied to, brother.
No, I mean, it was a really like harrowing moment. I mean, it was a really powerful moment. And for me, like, at least, I've done a few things in my adult life. I lived in New York and all that kind of stuff too. But, it was always like, man, we got to fight to make a better world. And I just don't like the way a lot of leftists like write folks off. And what maybe really pisses me off, and I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, is like a lot of Southern folk who like leave the South and become like left wing. They turn their backs on their community, right?
Yeah.
In a way that makes me frustrated. We're never going to get better if you do that.
Isn't that a class alignment? Like once you leave, now you feel like you're in a better class. So it's like, I
think so.
Those people anymore. I mean, we see the same thing with the hood. Jean, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually, sort of related to, ask both Matt and David a question about, Left Reckoning is a pretty popular show, and of course you were associated with TMBS. I'm just wondering about, how do your friends and, personal milieu, back home relate to the kind of politics that you have? And I did have a second question, which is from the super chat, which was the super chat were asking.
Here, I'll bring it up.
Bringing it up, yeah.
Did you guys see this question? I wanted to have you guys address this directly because it pretty much was directed at you guys. Can poor white folks afford to be quote unquote white any longer as a result of deindustrialization and capital consolidation? And I'll let you guys address that.
Let you go, Dad.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think the answer is no, right? I mean, one of the greatest tricks, especially in the South, is making white working people feel like they have a difference from their neighbors. And like South Carolina for me, where I grew up was, I did not have this kind of like growing up in like, I live in like the white neighborhood. I grew up in the mixed neighborhood because we were poor. So that kind of division that a lot of folks is sort of pumped into you by schooling and like the culture there. You realize is extremely harmful because you realize you have a hell of a lot more in common with your neighbor and the people you're hanging out with all the time than the rich assholes who live on the golf course. And I mean, the question about deindustrialization, it's like there really is no choice for socialists to really, especially in the South, to really start hammering this home and breaking that power, because it's very politically powerful still, right? Like whites still vote Republican and shit like that. But if you want to break it, we have to do something different. And this is the thing that gets me really worked up, though, is that we have to do it in a socialist way. We have to do it in a working class way, because what so many people try to do is like, oh, well, let's just vote for like the lawyer Democrat, right? Who like ain't going to do shit for you, doesn't respect you. And like, that's not a very enticing way to change people's political and worldview perspective, right? It's just like, oh, let's just get the rich guy from Columbia or wherever the hell into office and things are going to change, because they're not. We have to do something. It's harder, but we have to do that kind of organic politics. And I'll just say, like, I can't speak for North Dakota, but when it comes to those barriers, like racial barriers, at least for working class people, especially in South Carolina, I mean, like those working class neighborhoods are extremely diverse. And I think most people have a kind of general common sense about those things that I think you can speak to. And I think that the kind of image that people have of what working class communities are like in the South might be a little mistaken, is all.
Yeah, I don't have much to say beyond that, but I think you're right about that. Like, I think the people who can afford to be white are the people who have extra money, typically, because of exactly the reason you're stating. Like, in North Dakota, I mean, not very diverse except for extremely segregated along, native versus settler lines, basically. Yeah. And I mean, that's a I don't really know how to. I like. Can they afford to be white? It's like in North Dakota, like unfortunately, like I don't know. I have a very pessimistic view of what happened after Dakota Access Pipeline and a lot of reactions and just like kind of the awful like sharing of. Like you would have thought that there was just mass violence by protesters there instead of what really happened, which is a Fed planted a gun on somebody and they got arrested, right? Like, and so I don't know. Like I don't know if they can afford to be white, but I think unless there's some kind of intervention, there a lot of people there are going to be white. But as far as like the poor folks, I think David's exactly right. Like they often have way more interaction with Native people in North Dakota too, than people that are in nicer neighborhoods that are distance away from, say, a trailer park. They don't have any non-white people in their neighborhood at all.
Yeah, we have a super chat that we have to address.
We have to address this as a whole, and I want to say shout out to Sean Moon for the very nice super chat. Thank you, Sean. Eugene Debs was from Indiana. Socialism has a rich history in the United States before the Palmer raids and McCarthyism. Does reviving that tradition necessitate working with the Democratic Party or completely disowning that party?
I want to address that because
Debs voted for Biden is what he said.
As much as we want to romanticize Eugene Debs, let's remember that many of the former Black socialists who were frustrated with the lack of dedication the socialists had to the race question left the Socialist Workers' Parties and became communists right around the time of the Russian Revolution because the communists were more dedicated to racial justice than the socialists. This is a fact. The good book you want to read, The Cry Was Unity, African-American Communists from 1917 to 1934, really documents that history with people like Cyril Briggs, the African Black Brotherhood, and how many we do have a history of great Black socialists like Hubert Harrison, A. Philip Randolph, but also let's make it clear that many Black radicals in the early 20th century were innately more attracted to the communists who were more radical than the socialists because they felt that Debs and many of the socialists were not serious about the question of racism, and it made them join the Communist Party for that reason.
Would you have called Debs a true class reductionist, Pascal?
I mean, a lot of people have a romanticization of Debs. I think Debs was pretty shitty on the race issue. You can read some of his quotes. I think it was pretty horrible.
I mean, you can't forget, too, not to problematize this or anything like that, but Stalin threatened to send the Red Army into Mississippi.
That's right. To help the Black sharecroppers.
Yeah.
I mean, the common term, like, we always get this kind of ridiculous Jordan Peterson anti-communist, blather from these morons and their Negro sock puppets. But the reality, the fact is that under the common term and during the 30s and 40s, there was no community, there was no organization and no movement of white people in this country more dedicated to Black liberation than the Communist Party. And that's a fact.
So we had an interview with Megan Day at Jacobin on our channel on Commonwealth College in
Arkansas.
In Arkansas, yeah, which is a fascinating history, right? Because you actually see this tension between the Socialist Party and the Communists sort of play out generationally. So this college was the idea of it was that this was going to be a college for working class people and to train militants and to educate and arm the working class with knowledge. But it's interesting because the socialist, the more Debsian version of it, was much more like holistic, right? Like we're going to read the classics and sort of think about things. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was class struggle, revolution, that kind of stuff. But then you see that shift with in the 30s with the communists and the old Debsian kind of socialists. And unfortunately, the tension between all those groups, plus with just heightening of, like Jim Crow laws and things like that, and attacks on the college, it ends up shutting down. But you can see that historical tension between what later becomes the American Communist Party and the Debsian kind of structures on the question of race, right? Because there was this kind of like, well, we'll figure it out as we get along, versus the communists being like, no, we need to show up and we need to be bodies on the line, fighting for these things in Arkansas. Because this is a fight that's happening in our neighborhood, in our community. And we need to be fighting against these super crazy white supremacist organizations that are rising. I just want to note that. And I guess maybe to the question about I'd be curious to hear what y'all think about the Democratic Party. If I were to just do my spiel in a minute.
I want to address the question. Someone asked where they can get a citation about Stalin.
Hammer and Hoe.
Hammer and Hoe. Joe. Yeah. What's the brother's name who wrote the book? Remind me of his name.
Robin D.G. Kelly.
Robin D.G. Kelly. Hammer and Hoe talks about the Stalin's role in offering help to the Alabama and the Alabama sharecroppers who were communists, as a matter of fact.
I also learned in that book, which I haven't finished yet, but Bismarck was the head of the Peasant International in like the early 1900s, which I need to look more into. But do you want to say about the Democratic Party? I mean, I always say if I ran for office in North Dakota, I would try to do it first with no ties to the Democratic Party at all. But I think the problem with the question I have is like disowning the Democratic Party. Like we don't own that at all. To a certain extent, like they have ownership over progressive politics and left politics. I think the idea we need to get out from under them, and how to do that, I think is like that's the $1 trillion question.
I think that we should stop caring about the Democratic Party, the Green Party, the Labor Party, or the left, and start worrying about organizing working class and poor people.
Yeah.
Having an understanding of power?
I mean, what I'm saying is that I think that we can decide how to confront all of those various tools of the ruling class when we have a strategy of mass mobilization and organization and disciplining our people about our politics.
Well, let me ask this question to the panel. Do you feel that there is too much of a fear of infiltration? Like I feel like people are too scared to do anything because they're like, oh well, COINTELPRO.
Well, I don't think the American left needs, the state doesn't need to do COINTELPRO. The left will do it to itself because one of the tendencies I've noticed in the post-Bernie era is because of Bernie gave people some kind of like hope that there was a chance of progressive change. There was a project that people from a variety of different political wings on the left could at least mobilize, whether it was enthusiastic endorsement or whether it was tactical endorsement. There was a project. Now we're in a period of frankly, the degeneration of the left into sectarianism and factionalism, because there doesn't seem to be a project to rally around in which there is any kind of like even medium-term chance of success. And to the point of the Democratic Party, the way I view the Democratic Party is it's not like a political party in other parts of the world. The Democratic and Republican Party have far more powerful institutional and legal control on access to the ballot than political parties in Britain, France. In Britain, our 2.5-party system is maintained by the first past the post electoral system. In America, the 2-party system is maintained by the way in which the ballot is organized in the United States, which makes it difficult so I don't have a problem with people on the left running as Democrats. But I don't think we should be I care about the candidate. So if there's a Democratic Party candidate that I think is going to be have a positive role within parliamentary politics, I would support them. But I don't think we have to support every single Democratic Party candidate. And I do think there is some utility to doing what the Republicans do, which is like, take your bat and ball home and let some center, there's no way anyone should be sold on let's back Kirsten Sinema because there could be a Republican. I was like, no, let's throw Kirsten Sinema to the dogs and let her rot. And if the Democrats lose their Senate majority, so be it. But we can't afford to have people like that. We should be willing to metaphorically take out Democrats and not fall into vote.
I have friends here. Sorry, Jason, you were going to say.
No, please go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I have friends here in Texas in labor, right? And they're doing really incredible work of organizing labor here. And they make this point. They made this point to me privately about the Democrats, which is coming from like AFL-CIO stuff, when they're really trying to build like a militant base here. And you have that, like in Texas, like we need a militant base of labor. There's no doubt. If you want change, I think we need that. Because I'm telling you, the worst situation that could happen, I think, in Texas is if it just becomes like a kind of like, wishy-washy, like Democrat-controlled state. Because what that means is it cements the power of like centrist Democrats even longer. I think that the potential of just overrunning the Republicans in this state with like a kind of radical left labor movement, there's an opportunity for it. Anyways, what I'm saying is that when I talk to my labor friends, they sometimes ask, like, why the hell are we endorsing Democrats who are going to lose in every election, who do stuff, all of this kind of anti-gun stuff that, I'm sorry, it's just like dead on arrival here, with everybody for the most part. What are we getting from that? And, and they're not obviously saying that, well, we should start endorsing Republicans, but it's just like, I'm not seeing by like engaging with this party that we're getting benefit for our people. And I think the bigger damage, and sort of what Gene was hitting at, is conflating like a left labor movement or a left socialist movement with the Democratic Party is extremely dangerous. I'm not one of these people, though, who gets super holy about these questions. I think Pascal was saying it right early on, right? It's like, what we need to be doing is organizing our people, right? Organizing our power. I think sometimes people get too, and I understand why you're sitting around, you're thinking about these things, right? Where they get too worked up about that kind of like label thing, or like, oh, what's the big strategy? And it's like, I'm sorry, I hate to be, simplistic on this, but like, if we don't organize ourselves, we're always going to lose. And if I could just give like a quick example of this, because I think sometimes for Americans, it's worth understanding that there are other countries where like the kind of left or center left coalitions come into power and they're not able to do what they say they want to do. Yep. Syriza is a great example of this in Greece. Mm-hmm. Syriza was the coalition of the radical left, and they came up with an incredible electoral strategy built on the problems of neoliberal capitalism and the European Union. They get swept into power, and then they're in power, and what happens? Nothing. And the point here is not that electoral politics doesn't work, but the problem is that your relationship to the base, the relationship to the working class was so hollow, right? For people who are familiar with the history, will probably know that there was this big vote on whether or not to accept another round of austerity, EU dictated austerity. And the people said, vote no, and Syriza accepted it, right? And I don't want to get into that tactical moment right there, but that's a big division between the party and the people. The other example, I think, is something that Leo Panich makes, who was a really incredible social strategist in Paris, who passed away last year. He makes this really great point about Syriza trying to do like the good stuff, like the radical stuff. And they have this idea that basically they should turn public schools in Greece into working class centers, right? So basically after the schooling day, like have this be a place where working people can come together and strategize and organize, right? Which sounds great, right? That's the kind of thing that we want to be doing. But there was a practical question there. When the education minister started proposing that, they didn't have people to call. They were unable to do that kind of, like, even though they had state power, they were unable to sort of like get the people to show up and do the kind of things that you would want them to be doing in that kind of situation, because there was this kind of fixation like, oh, if we just get the right electoral strategy and win, that's going to mean victory for us. And I'm sorry, it sucks, but socialist politics is much harder than just winning elections, because you can have state power and still not want to do what we want to do. Because remember, we're materialists, we're Marxists. So we understand that, there's political power, but there's a lot of power that's not necessarily controlled by the levers of the government. And that's private property power. That's power of the big bourgeoisie, right? Again, that's like, I don't mean to make people hopeless. I just want to make people recognize that, like, the fight is so deep that we're going to do the right electoral strategy can be a huge mistake.
Say it again for the people. Say it again for the people.
I wanted to ask this question.
The back.
I want to ask this question for everybody as well. There also feels like there is a cult of personality, even post-Obama, around people in politics that we haven't seen before in my lifetime. I've said this before on show. I'm 40. I'll be 44 next month. And I never remember people constantly outside of very particular political shows knowing the names of congressmen. Tip O'Neill was not part of a Johnny Carson bit.
Well, let's not forget, I would argue that the cult of personality around American politicians starts with John F. Kennedy.
Right, but that being said, how does that affect any sort of movement growth when people kind of project what they think a candidate is and don't really do any sort of due diligence or research? They just go, well, this person said they're for this thing, i.e. Medicare for all, free college, a hot dog in every bun, whatever it is they're for. What is your guys' take on that kind of cult of personality?
I think it's an impediment to really, really having a serious political praxis. I think that what ends up happening is that when we get wrapped up into the personality of politicians, we end up basically like choosing baseball cards that we like or teams that we like, and be like, "Oh, you're talking bad about my team. Don't how dare you? Like, this is my team. I love my team." And it becomes really kind of like this pedantic, immature, childish, nonsensical, ridiculous exhibition. And what none of us want to admit, frankly, no matter how much we love our favorite Democratic socialists in Congress, frankly, they have a bigger and tighter allegiance to Nancy Pelosi than any of us. And that's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the #1 fundraiser for the Republicans, and AOC is a massive fundraiser for the Democrats. And I wonder, like, to the extent that she's tolerated, or like, I mean, I don't think she's just tolerated. I think she's also like Pascal said, but if she wasn't bringing in a whole lot of money, would she be suffered to make stances that she does make? I don't know. I think that the cult of personality is really driven to this need to fundraise for candidates.
And people remember, that's like the Democratic Party's game. Sorry, there's a comment. It's like the Democratic Party is very, very fixated on fundraising, and it's like if you read internally, you talk to people who like are familiar with the party on the national level. It's fundraising more than anything, and especially now that they're in power. It's like they're not really wanting to do all the things they were running on, and it's a great situation to lose in 2022, right? To be like, oh, well, if only y'all just opened up your piggy banks a little bit more and we're, funding our war chest, then we'll actually do all the things that we could have done these first 2 years of the administration.
Yeah, to what extent? Marcus from the left flank is here in the chat, and he said that's what got Pelosi her position, fundraising. I think when we talk about fundraising and we talk about power.
Georgia, I mean, like, I'm sorry, like Beto in Texas, like there's all these people who are like in the opposition too, who are very precious to the party, and people talk about them as if they're like, the way forward. It's like, well, these people are losing their elections, but they're really great at raising money for the party.
I think that people, to the basic question, what is the relationship of the left or socialists to the Democratic Party? I think this is my mantra. The function of the Democratic Party is to neutralize the politics and policy demands of anyone to its left under the goal of an auspices to coalesce with the party to its right. And unless we are fundamentally honest, that is the function of the Democratic Party is to neutralize the most radical political functions of its left to ultimately coalesce with those to its right, we are lying to ourselves. And the reason why we have a two-party duopoly and the system that we have is because that is the nature of this dialectic. Okay? So if we agree, hold on, let me finish. If we agree that the purpose of the Democratic Party is to neutralize the politics to its left, to coalesce and collapse to the politics of its right, then we realize that the purpose of the Democratic Party is not for us to take it over, but is to fight the Democratic Party, even if we have our own people in the Democratic Party, to force the Democratic Party to our politics to its left. So in other words, we have to develop a politics, and I'm not opposed to electoralism. I'm not one of these people who believes that I do believe in the good old tried and true saying, inside game, outside game. I understand the value of that. We need movements, and we need politicians that we have fiduciary capacity to pressure on our demands.
But remember that thing that I read last week from that 1973 Ebony magazine article about class structures in Harlem and how leftover Great Society programs, the different kinds of democracy, racial democracy over social democracy. And when you have these organizations, these nonprofits that become the mouthpiece, right? Mm-hmm. They're not going to stop their funding dollars to have a greater coalition.
Well, this is, you said something. Jason, you're such a smart guy. Let's talk about this. There is the Democratic Party and the left flank of Capitol. Mm-hmm. In the left flank of Capitol, there are organizations and institutions that are not the Democratic Party, but have the same goal of the Democratic Party in collapsing the robust strength of the radical left and having it coalesce to a more conservative party. What is in the left flank of Capitol? The foundation world, the philanthropies, nonprofits, universities.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're 100% right in pointing out those folks and those institutions, and that's the analysis that we need. I think the only hesitation that I have right now, thing I want to throw into the conversation is I do think that sometimes people get a little too precious with the idea of the Democratic Party, because what they do is they control ballot access in a lot of places, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to find a way, and it's tricky, and I don't think it's been perfectly done so far by the socialist movement. It's particularly like the DSA, for example. Right. But using our the situations that we have and the opportunities that we have available for us to build some power, like that can really matter, right? Yeah,
Dave, you said something important. I mean, I'm going to get it for saying this. I might get it from Jason. I think the most misutilized organization on the left right now is the Democratic Socialists of America. I think it's the most misutilized.
Mm-hmm.
It's misutilized. It's misutilized because, number one, it's one of the few nominally left organizations that has penetrated the electoral realm in a small way, that still has the organizational infrastructure on a national level in almost every major city in the country, has the capacity to generate independent membership, and still can control a platform on its own without absolutely having to answer to the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, but there's some structural reasons why the DSA has this tension, right? Which is one, their kind of fixation, and there's a historical reason for it. And I would argue that it's negative. I'm sorry to all our big DSA comrades out there. But the kind of refusal of doing good old socialist politics, things like democratic centralism, et cetera, right, are frustrating because AOC's, who everyone's sort of dancing around and talking about, right? She's somebody who I think, and we say this on the show all the time, I think that there's a portion of the left that gets really fixated on her in a way that I think is unhelpful, not because I don't think that she should be criticized, but I think it's a kind of escapist thing. The same way we were talking about Syriza a couple of minutes ago, right? If AOC just stood up, we'd be living under socialism.
But this is a question I actually wanted to ask. Is okay. to what extent is this, we've been talking about the politics of personality. To what extent is the left media space as a kind of media space basically focusing a lot of left media channels seem to just be either, fawning praise for AOC or, just visceral hatred for AOC. And it kind of creates a kind of politics, which isn't really politics. It's just about whether I like AOC,
who your favorite person is.
Who's your favorite person?
That's what I was
but
asking.
that is monetizing. That's
it's cash.
But that's what I was asking
cash.
originally, Jean, is like how do we fight this kind of cult of personality where you have this person in AOC or the squad who I always bring this up. They are a creation of the media.
Yeah.
They didn't all put their hands in like Avengers. S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't come in with Sam Jackson and say, hey, I got a plan for you broads. None of that shit happened. So they took that shit and ran with it. And of course, the Trump campaign took that shit and ran with it. And now it's like this point of contention where people are like, well, fuck these people. I'm like, that's not even your congressperson. If you don't,
and people are attacking Nina Turner as well. Like people are just making their bones on fighting Nina Turner, which I don't see how that's particularly helpful.
I've been trying to find.
I'm telling you, like, can I just say what we do on Left Reckoning on this question? Because I think about a lot, and like we learned a lot from Michael, who is really good at having quality interventions with these kind of things, right? Because there's a lot of personalities in the left media space, and people like to be right, and I get that, I really do. But what we try to do with the show is talk about these things in a way where it's like, Matt and I very rarely even talk about AOC. Or even Ilhan or anybody like that. And when we do from time to time, and jump in, Matt. I don't want to speak for both.
Well, you said like we recently talked about,
and we came at her too.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's the most recent times we've did that come to mind is her Cuba stuff, and that we had the talk with Ben Spielberg this week about how, while I think the fraud squad stuff is a bit unproductive, like these people actually absolutely need to figure out how to grow a backbone and affect these sort of legislative fights if they're going to like come back to people for their efforts in the future.
Yeah, and I just want to make this really clear too, because like what we do more often than talking about AOC or bringing in any of these names in, because it gets people riled up and they know what side of the room to go to, right?
And it's a searchable term.
No, it's super. I mean, I'm sorry, y'all do a show too. What you can be doing to juice your numbers. But like, what we try to do whenever these things seem to be like frothing up to the discourse, or that's what everybody's talking about, we try to remind people about like, okay, here's what the parties are, here's what Congress can do, here are like the levers of power, here are the struggles that are actually happening. So we're not doing this kind of like, we're running interference for like the squad, because I think that a lot of the stuff that they do is contemptible and they need to be criticized for it. But what frustrates me about a lot of the criticism that you get of them is this kind of also false notion that we're just moments away from liberation. If only they did, what they were supposed to do, right? And I think that is more of a frustrating mistake that I think is becoming really prevalent right now. Because I understand the anger and the frustration that people have with them, and personally, I agree with a fair amount of it. But I don't think it's worthwhile if you're doing this kind of stuff to sell people false hope or false solutions, right? Because it's not just that it's not coming from them because they don't have the disposition to do it. It's not coming from them because they have no relation with the working class. I mean, Bernie opened up the hood a little bit towards the end of his 2020 presidential run when he started to say, if we want to do Medicare for all, we need to have mass mobilization in the streets, right? Which I will say is probably a little too late. At that point, if he were to come into power, like we didn't have those organizations in the first place. But that is 100% the kind of way that people need to be thinking about getting any of these things done. And if you get fixated on like, okay, well, if we just had this or that, we'd be, we'd be living in communism or something like that, or even having Medicare for all. I think that's incorrect. Is there a lot of stuff that they can be doing that they're not? Absolutely. And we talk about that on the show a lot too. But I think, I don't know, what we're sort of talking about, the conversations and the freakouts, I just think are misdirected in the sense that like, it also like just wouldn't even matter if they were just being good
I honestly don't. I don't
think
think it's misdirection. I think there are people in the media sphere who just think of it as a way to monetize and turn political discourse not into political education, as Pascal talks about, but into political entertainment.
The political cinematic universe.
I mean, look, even worse than that, right? I think that the people in the left media sphere, and we're all in the left media sphere, who focus on that discourse, and we don't cover that ridiculous inside baseball. What is AOC wearing today? What kind of sneakers is she wearing? Nonsense at all on our show. But the people who do that kind of chatter, and the people who are even worse, the people who cover the chatter of the people who do that chatter and comment on the chatter. There's a level to this. They're all like the left media that talk about the politicians, and there's a whole nother left media about people who talk about what the left media is saying to each other about the politicians. Like, we have that now. It's like hip hop. It's like the beef is more interesting than the music, and that's how bad it is. Let me make this point.
Okay.
This is a product of the fact, not to address, we don't have a left in America. We have leftists, all right? Or people who believe they're leftists, okay? We don't have a left. And I would argue that you can't have a left unless you have a movement. And we haven't had a real movement in over 50 years, okay? Every time before the 1960s that we had a left in America, tell me one time that left was not attached to a movement.
I mean,
that's the thing. Like,
we all
know Shahid, right? We all know Shahid Buttar. I actually did some work with the campaign. I would call him a friend. Shout out to Paul Prescott in the chat. Shout out, Paul. Speaking of cats running for office.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason. Can I just say something to our chat? Because we're cross streaming, and I just realized people have been sending us chats and questions.
Read a super chat.
We're not answering questions on the Left Reckoning channel. I appreciate them all. Send them to our email, and we'll get to them in the future or something.
If you want to address them on the show, please feel free to be like, just send me a message in the private chat.
Yeah.
Jeff, you gotta address this.
Actually, we're recording a think tank right after this, so we'll just maybe
exactly
bundle up those and use those for our own show.
I figured this was a great idea. Like, we could actually simulcast both.
Oh, no, I love it. I just realized that people have been, want to interact. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt the flow of the conversation.
No, but we all know Shahid, and Michael Brooks said this in a video ad that we're both in, that he's not just running against the Republican Party, or he's running against the entire Democratic establishment. That entire Democratic establishment was so powerful that there was a media blackout. Just because you saw Shahid on like Useful Idiots doesn't mean shit. It was very hard for him to raise money.
Yeah,
he raised a decent amount of money, but you're talking about Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi had a luncheon and raised like $85 million. That's power.
Yeah.
That's power. That same day, that guy got on the front page of the Chronicle after 2 years of trying to run. The next week, the story breaks about him and the being mean to staffers and all that other shit. And the campaign is it's still somewhat trashed.
Yeah.
Something that minuscule as like yelling at staffers, and you got a guy challenging maybe one of the most powerful people in politics. And
who was the guy up in was it Massachusetts, Matt?
Oh yeah,
on the same time.
Yeah,
that was a lesson. That one especially in Mass was a lesson of what they know that they can do to eradicate any kind of competition, because they realize that there's a culture amongst the left now that is very easy. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, at least in that very specific political arena, it's a very easy thing to try to manipulate towards your own purposes, right? And I think that our opponents are recognizing that.
Yeah,
well, let's be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say I have no love for Al Franken, but I think like they saw a model there, and I also think like the people who thought you couldn't question the involvement of like Hannity friends and stuff like that in that moment, I think that was a bad sign for how we respond to these things intelligently. Like I said, like Al Franken, I think it'd be nice if we had. I think Al Franken's basically replacement level as far as Democratic senators go, but he was like. I don't know. Maybe that's the wrong example, but this is a pattern. I feel like.
Well, what I was going to say is this is this inverted commas woke culture, this liberal woke culture seems to be hegemonic, even on the political left, and because of the hegemony of like, of course we should be understanding towards people who are making accusations of sexual abuse or violence and things like that. Of course, we have to be very careful, and the balance has often historically been against those people, making it difficult for them to like raise serious issues. But there's a certain sort of strand which just completely rejects the idea that we can have any kind of due process, which means anyone can make an accusation and then someone's career is ruined. And that is the fact that that kind of culture is penetrating the left means it doesn't take much for Democratic Party operatives to cause all kinds of dissensions. It reminds me of the Julian Assange thing.
But like, I just wanted to note this, because Democratic Party operatives swim in the same waters as a lot of left-wing folks, and
they're funded by the same people.
Well, the money's there, and it's like when we're talking about this stuff that Gene's talking about, like that's culture stuff. Right. I don't just mean that in like a division of like culture versus politics. I mean, like this is if you're like a 20-something or early 30-something, this is how people talk and think and interact with each other in any space that they're in. And it is notable how much permeation of these two groups are, like, Democratic Party operatives, big believers of the Democratic Party, and socialists.
I want to bring in a friend of show. He's part of the Saturday Crüe. We are part of his Tuesday show, Not a Barbershop. You guys may know him as the Black Man in Maine. We just know him as Marcus from the Left Flank Vets.
What? Hey, Marcus.
Yo.
What? Marcus? What? I thought you were on hiatus.
For 5 heartbeats.
Well, so there's a lot of stuff that so I'm moving next week, and there's a lot of stuff I'm trying to get done. I actually canceled a show yesterday that allowed me to, that's why I jumped into the chat to see what was going on, and I was like, oh shit, left right.
So Marcus, now that you're here, but say your piece, but then I need you to address this super chat, okay?
Okay. Real quick, all I wanted to say is like, Matt Leck, thank you for the raids that you give me.
Thank you.
When you send them from the majority report, we appreciate all the support. All right, let's get this super chat.
We get so many people watching.
Shout out to Janice Graham. She's like, thank God it's Marcus, another black guy. Oh God.
I want to add to Marcus's shout to Matt. Thank you again for bringing all those people to watch 3 angry black dudes on Twitch.
Oh, it cost me nothing, and I think you guys do such a great job on that show. So I think that's a great place for the MR audience to land after our apologetics.
Oh, it's Matt Leck who sends the
Pascal shit sometimes.
Matt Leck is the one who sends the majority report to raid. This is not a barbershop. By the way, Janice Graham wants us to do This is not a barbershop show.
Real quick, Marcus. And Matt, for y'all motherfucker, you young cats. So LeBron has a show. It's like a barbershop show. And my girl last night at like midnight was watching that shit. And I was like, what is this? It's just rich niggas bitching about being rich niggas. It should be called Rich Niggas.
And that, I mean, honestly, in my head, This Is Not a Barbershop is
the antithesis to that.
It's like for me, it's like the Black View. It's like,
oh my God, nah, man.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, but honestly, when we come in there, it's just like we give our takes on whatever the hell's going on. We talk about whatever is like literally. I mean, Jason will have a bug up his ass over something that happened like in his neighborhood, and like that's what the show is about. The youth firing off fireworks. So
And
I
me
mean, like,
yelling at little kids with no shoes on. Damn near came out of my drawers. What the hell is wrong with y'all?
Miss Johnson's grass looks good. Staley's grass looks good.
We got
no,
a super chat from Sean. He addressed this with Taft-Hartley in place. Are massive wildcat strikes the only possible leverage average Americans can exercise today? It looks like the PRO-ACT charade was just another example of what Pascal was describing. Oh man, hold on. I can't get it all on the screen. Describing emasculating and co-opting workers. Damn. Sean, you really angry today. I mean, I appreciate
I like the massive wildcat strikes. If we can throw in a little bit of Mowing during the wildcat strikes, I'll be like, yo, this is a party.
Now, David and Matt.
Can I give a shout out to a wildcat strike that's taking place in Springfield?
Yeah.
Word.
There's the workers at the Avery restaurant have been going on strike because Avery is like a fancy restaurant downtown in Springfield, and they've gone on strike. They've just like gone on strike, and they're in a strong position, guys, because the labor market is tight. So they want to get paid like a living wage because it's not cheap. So I have a lot of respect for the guys at the Avery who have the servers at the Avery who have said enough is enough and have walked out on work. So good on those guys. And to what Sean's saying, I was like, I think now, if you're going to do wildcat strikes, now's the time while the labor market's tight.
And I know Matt and David have had people on from the Alabama, what is it called?
Warrior
Labor Report.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Valley Labor Report. I mean, that's so exciting. And I'm sure, people who are listening are familiar. I mean, this strike has been going on there with over 1,000 coal workers in Alabama, 4 months deep. And they did something I love so much. Maybe it's just, I had a lot of great friends in New York. Don't get me wrong, but I was very ready to leave that place. And I love that these boys, they got on a bus and they drove up to Blackrock Capitol, and they were protesting outside of Blackrock because Blackrock controls the ownership of the mine. And I love that just as an action, but also it cuts right to the truth of the matter, which is that, Capitol has this advantage that it can sometimes seem ethereal, right? It's like, oh, well, this is just the machinations of the system. This is numbers on a spreadsheet. We can't do much, right? No, they're a bunch of assholes who walk in every day to Blackrock, and they are saying these coal miners don't deserve a raise. Honestly, it's not even a raise as much. I'm sure they're demanding more now, but for people who aren't familiar with the story, the mine was losing money, and the workers voted to lower their contract, to lower their wages temporarily until the mine got back on its feet. The mine got bought out by BlackRock, and now the mine's making more money than it was before the slowdown. And now these people are saying, we want our fair share. We sacrifice. We put more equity into this shit than y'all assholes did. Anyways, those guys standing outside of a BlackRock building and being like, this is us. This is what you're doing to us. This is what you're doing to our family, I think is a great action. And very powerful, and I want to see more of it.
That's where in like kind of even where I jumped in. There's a lot of talk of just like left organizations and how to build or attaching to building onto a movement. But I think that's where like you see a whole lot of like important things kind of coinciding into one. And the fact that like a lot of these issues that we talk about actually and I'm stealing this phrase from John Iadarola. He had said this on one of their shows on TYT of like, it's a constellation. A lot of people get focused on their certain star, whether it might be healthcare, whether it might be education, whether it might be some type of pollutant going on in your community. But at the end of the day, it's a constellation. All of these things do pull and push on each other and a whole lot of factors. And like you said, these coal miners going to Blackrock and the thing that, and the fact of the matter too, is that like, if there is that's where I think having a more educated and organized left that could actually pierce through and really make something happen is tying the housing crisis also to Blackrock. And now you're starting to overlap some of these issues. And it's like, there's literally not one of these big corporations or that are destroying us that you couldn't do that to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to overlap a bunch of different issues and get a different constituencies or communities actually working in congruency to fight against like the people who are directly at fault.
Well, let's talk about the current political moment, right? There's an 800-pound gorilla in the room. It may not be 800 pounds. Maybe it's
Just got here, baby.
maybe it's 300 pounds. The gorilla
I'm working on it.
The gorilla in the room is that out of the fear of the specter of Trumpism, the Democratic Party has cajoled all of its members, including the squad, to engage in a united front with Biden to protect his administration from the perception of failure in order to ensure that Trump and the right cannot score points against the Democratic coalition. If you don't know what's been happening, you know now, because it is. If you don't believe it's been happening, all you got to do is watch Bernie Sanders on being interviewed by Crystal Ball.
Ooh, did you see that, man?
Bernie Sanders say it himself.
Right. I agree 100% that with you, Pascal. You know, one of the beauties of Trumpism is it's a brilliant mobilization tool for the Democratic Party. We often the mainstream media focuses on Trump and his phenomenal ability to get Republicans or Republican adjacent people out to vote, which is true. But one thing, and I tell this to conservatives around here who don't believe Biden won the election. I say, look, you like Trump because he triggers the libs. But what happens when you trigger the libs? They turn out to vote, right? Yep. That's why. So the Democratic Party, just like the MSNBC, yes, Trump is scary to them on some level, but he's also a moneymaker and also a key mobilization tool. I think people miss that kind of paradox as Trump. So Trump can get more people to vote Republican than ever voted Republican, but he can get more people to vote Democrat than he ever got to vote Democrat because he's such a
I told you guys, the family that I live with, that was a very conservative, very Christian conservative family, were torn with Donald Trump, more so than the war crimes of Bush Jr. Donald Trump really put them at a point where it's like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be watching all this Fox News.
I think the thing, though, that is dangerous for the Democrats is the fact that Donald Trump got turnout based off of old rules, based off of classic get people to the polls. Democrats got people to turn out this past 2020 election. That was the easiest way or easiest voting that's ever existed in American history. The populace had the easiest way to vote than ever before. Extended times, mailing, no excuse absentee, all of that shit. All of the things that are going to fucking go away and disappear into the winds. So that's where, yes, Donald Trump did get people to turn out against him, but only if there was almost zero barriers to vote.
Well, Marcus,
you're being euphemistic. They didn't just disappear into the wind. They were stripped away by voter suppression tactics in some of 30-odd states that are controlled by Republicans that are going to make it more difficult for particularly people of a certain hue and pigmentation who do things like trolls on the polls and stuff like that, who organize around black churches, who organize, bus routes to get people out to vote, who bring, sandwiches to folks to vote, who bring chairs and picnic baskets and R&B music and all that stuff. The people who do that, who have a certain pigmentation aren't going to be able to do that anymore.
Can I problematize that a little bit? I mean, because, first of all, obviously the attacks on voting rights are horrible and they need to be opposed. This is not even like a left, right, this is just like basic democracy, right? People should be able to fucking vote. But Texas was a really frightening example, I think, for the Democratic Party strategy as to what they want to do. right? There's been for years and years and years this kind of argument that you get from Democrats in the state of Texas that Texas is not a Republican state, it's a non-voting state, right? And this last election completely proved that wrong. I mean, Texas had historic amounts of people showing up to vote. And what was frightening, for me at least, was seeing how incompetent the Democratic Party is in its outreach here. Because you started to see Donald Trump, of all people, eat into the black vote in Texas. And of all people, border communities, Hispanic border communities in the Rio Grande Valley. People were voting for Trump. And you know what they found though when they did like interviews with folks afterwards? And this is why I can't stand the Democratic Party so much. They infuriate me because like they have a playbook and they don't use it. Instead of doing what they should be doing, they focus on like, oh, well, we're just going to try to appeal to these kind of suburban voters. We do this, kind of cultural stuff. You know what people said the reason they voted for Trump was in a lot of these communities? Well, that guy sent me $1,200 and that really helped me out. Right. And it frustrates me now to see Biden basically run away from all of these extremely popular programs. Again, not because I want Biden to be victorious or whatever, but it's just like, this is crazy to me that we had this moment of serious outreach of the government giving people money and doing these things that are very popular, and you're not trying to own that. Well, Trump was very successful in doing it, and it frustrates me to realize that. I mean, not that it was a new realization for me, but like, there really is no opposition party, and the reason why, just so nobody offends me on this, we all know the reason why Biden doesn't run on it, because he doesn't want to do the structural moves there, right? Because he doesn't want to own it, because he is, at the end of the day, he is answering to bosses. So he doesn't want to do things and own things like, oh, we put money in people's pockets that led to them not wanting to come and work for $7 an hour, right? We increased unemployment benefits to make sure that if you lose your job, you're not going to die, right? He doesn't want to make those things permanent.
Can I ask the not only the chat, but our guests and our audience a question? Here's a question. When has there been a Democratic Party president or political official that has made voter suppression a massive public national agenda in the country?
Yeah.
I mean, that's right. Like the Democrats now saying we're going to out-organize this voter suppression. It's
Yeah.
like, no, we're just going to live with the sort of more suburban constituency that this is going to deliver us, right? That's clearly what they want, and they're fine with it.
But this is also a problem with the delusions of liberalism. I mean, like, I think the Republicans are far more, they understand how power operates, and they don't have, very many solid principles, or at least the things that they say are their solid principles are not their solid principles.
You know why that is, Gene? You know why, Gene? Because the purpose of the Democratic Party is to neutralize the politics to its left,
Yeah.
and coalesce with the politics to its right.
But the thing is, like, these guys, I think within the Democratic Party leadership, they have a total delusion about how politics operates. I don't think it's even deliberate.
I realize they know what they're doing. This is not them being stupid. They're doing what they want. They don't care that Negroes can't vote.
I don't think it's stupidity. I think it's ideological. I think it's an ideological the way that they look at the world, the way that America first makes a lot more sense in foreign policy than Biden's like delusions about American liberal leadership in the world, and also his delusions that the rest of the world wants American leadership. I think the Democratic Party elite is so removed from society that and are bought into their own ideology that they cannot functionally move outside it. They care what someone like Joanne Reed says. So they don't, the Republicans have no shame in exercising power. But I don't think it's deliberate. Maybe for the donors.
Get what their donors are giving them. They have the same donor class as the Republicans.
Yeah, same with the eviction stuff.
Financial insurance companies, real estate, the insurance lobby, big pharma. Okay,
Pascal, I would say
these people don't give a damn about working class people. They care about getting their money from the donor class talking game like they care about working class folk, and then going to party on the French Riviera.
But they're also like, I think, I mean, I agree with you. I think I would also just add that you have to remember it's also voter management for them. Like, you know, like in New York City, for example, right, which is a place that's supposed to be the opposite of Texas, it's hard as hell to vote. And there's a reason for that. They know who votes, they know their people, and they have the inroads to be able to control those folks. You're right. And they don't want it to be massively expanded. They don't want a bunch of new folks voting. They don't want a bunch of young people voting.
You know why, Dave? You know why? Because they might get an AOC, a Nina Turner.
No, I agree. And I'm just saying it's like, it's funny. And again, I don't want to paint too broadly, because I do think there is a difference between what the GOP is doing and what the Democratic Party is doing there. But like, it's a similar kind of game, right? It's like control access to the ballot. The only notion that I would like to dispel is that it's not that if we just had like perfect European, or I don't know if Europe even they're good at voting there. You know what I mean, though? Like a nice version of, you know, it's easy to vote, that we're just going to usher in this like new era of socialism, because the work in all these communities is still very much needed to be done too.
Do you want to take the super chat, David?
Oh, sure. Our buddy from Philadelphia, Pascal and David, when you combine voter suppression with open carry easing, 2022 might be an effing nightmare in Texas.
Don't forget the barbecue.
You know what scares me about Texas?
What?
Paso shooting a few years ago, because I know
that was so. I mean,
I stayed in that Walmart parking lot touring out there a few years
did you really?
And it really, man, like the fact that somebody just walked up in Walmart like that, in a place where, you know as well as I know, David, cats had weapons.
Yeah.
It wasn't like nobody had a gun. I've been to Texas enough times to go into any place and cats just have guns willy-nilly.
Dude.
Homie, especially in Walmart.
Dude, I was at a store the other day, and I was like looking at a nice leather jacket, and the woman comes up to me and she's like, "Yeah, they won't be able to see it." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's just like, "It has a concealed carry pocket inside of the thing."
Nice.
And she was trying to sell me on it. It's like, "Yeah, I had this guy come in the other day, and he's like, oh, he pulled out his gun and he put it in." No, I mean, in all seriousness, that El Paso, I mean, all these shootings are just horrific. That one, though, really, like, you know, you can get a little numb to that stuff. That one really was so horrible, not just because of the horrors of what were done to all those folks, but El Paso, for people who aren't familiar, is one of the most beautiful places in the country. And I mean, just sort of like politically and culturally, it's just like America has a horrible history, and there's a lot of shit that's wrong with this country, but there are those kind of glimmers and communities that really give you hope and a lot of love. And El Paso is one of those places. You know, a really strong community, a really diverse community where people live, you know, and their neighbors, and, you know, a lot of stuff. We could learn a lot of lessons from El Paso, and for some white supremacists from Dallas to just drive across the country to terrorize them. Just
hours. He drove hell. It was like 6-7 hours. A motherfucker drove just to it was fucked up. And jokingly, we'll chuckle about the whole like open carry and voter suppression, but January 6th.
I'm much more worried about the voter suppression than anything. Not that I support the open carry, but that's just the open carry sucks. I don't like it, obviously, but it's just like, this just for dumbasses to get riled up. At the end of the day, every business and every place, and if you drive around Austin, they have these big ass signs outside of every place that says you're not allowed to bring a gun in here. And the business rights in Texas trump any other kind of political rights. So it's much more for people just get worked up. Not saying I don't oppose it, but I'm much more worried about the voter suppression than anything.
Not to get into the prognostication game right now, but I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine. And we were talking about all of these various things, and we were talking about 2022 and 2024, and he was pretty grim. I don't want to be that grim. And this is going to surprise people, right? As cynical as people think that I am, I don't want to believe that the right is going to take it in 2022 and 2024. I really, you know, this might shock Jason and even Gene, because I've been one of those people who's been saying for a while that it's a wrap. That, like, if it's not Trump, it's going to be DeSantis or both. on the same ticket in 2024, and Biden's done in 2022. Like, this might shock some of y'all, is that I don't want that to be the case. Because let me tell you something right now. When these reactionary right-wingers eventually get back in power, they're going to have the wind and so much blowback from all of this woke, CRT, blah, 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 yakety schmackety, that they're going to bring down a fascistic hammer that's going to be so hard that I'm afraid that the dust that's going to be knocked off the side of the country when it drops.
Well, they don't even need to do it to the whole country. Like the way the American electoral system is set up, they just need to make it like extremely undemocratic in like several key states, allow the liberals in California and New York to do what the hell that they want.
Yep.
And then just maintain control as a minority at a national level forever. That's why, like, people say that sometimes these guys don't really want Roe v. Wade to be overturned, because then they lose like a key mobilizing thing. But I agree with you, Pascal. I mean, like this, like we were talking about it with McManus the other day. You've got this postmodern conservatism and this postmodern kind of liberalism, and that postmodern conservatism has a lot more cultural and political resonance than woke stuff.
Listen, I know last time we got into a serious argument as to whether or not the right is going to come back in 2022, 2024. And you guys were really getting on me like, oh, this is ridiculous.
Was that on air or was that off air? Because
it was in the patron shit. It was in the patron section. And you guys was like, no, man, it's not going to happen. And let me tell you, and by the way, I don't want to be right about this. Enacting voter suppression laws in 30 some odd states, and no one even blinks. Enacting anti-critical race theory, meaning you can't teach Black history in school laws in almost 30 states, and no one even blinks. And then the Supreme Court, checkmate, takes another linchpin out of the Voting Rights Act, and no one even blinks.
Well, I want to just defend myself. I did not say that the Democrats, my point was that the right wing does not have a majority in this country. And the way that the right wing will dominate is through the exploitation of the undemocratic nature of the American representative system. I would agree that, I think the Democrats probably could, in absolute vote terms, maintain a majority in this country. But that is entirely irrelevant, because America is not a representative democracy. America is a highly, an oligarchical republic in which, what the people in America want does not have that much relationship with who's actually elected to power. So I don't disagree with your point. My point is just the numerical strength of the Republican Party is declining, but that doesn't necessarily mean its political strength will because of political structures. That was the point I was making back then.
Jason, what do you think?
Pascal, I think you won again.
Here it comes!
For real. And it's not like, the Republicans are like Superman. They're not like Thanos. It's like, when these motherfuckers have power, they use that shit, man.
Yeah. The only thing I would disagree with that Pascal said, and I agree with what Gene was saying, is like, as far as like the Democratic Party and some of these electeds having some type of like understanding of what they're doing, no. I think they've bubbled themselves. I think when they talk to quote unquote people, they talk to nonprofits, and there's that relationship there, and like they think they're doing good. And this is where, like, I mean, like, we could definitely have like a much more in-depth conversation off air, but like they believe they are doing the right thing. They believe that they're doing these things.
So you're gonna tell me when Obama was having his staff tell what was then called the left that please? You think we're going to enact a public option? You think you're in Canada? You think they didn't know what they were doing?
I mean, that shit took a hell of years.
I'll say the majority of Democrats in the legislature are completely operating off of their own belief system. I mean, like, if you want to take Obama and all that stuff, like, yeah, some of these people know exactly what the hell they're doing. What, like, I mean, you can't take AFRICOM and say, oops, you know, you can't take something on paper and then, you know.
The people who are interfacing with the donor class at the high level, Pelosi knows what's going on.
Yeah, I'll say Pelosi knows what's going on.
Biden knows when he's conscious, he knows what's going on.
But there's a whole lot of elections that like they are literally just operating off of like literally the like we love you letters that they get from whatever housing agency that year.
Ideology is a powerful drug.
Cinema got brought up earlier, and I agree that we should not lift a single finger for someone like her. I think she's a complete freak, but I don't think her losing would actually be that troublesome to Democratic leadership. I think they would kind of appreciate a little bit of the heat taken off. Like, that's honestly the one argument for, like, if you're going to vote for a D over an R generically, is like when they're in opposition, it's good for them because they can fundraise off of all this stuff. Go ahead, Pascal.
Real talk. What does it look like that Mr. U.S. Senator, Vice President in American politics for 50 years, Joe Biden,
Sleepy Joe,
is letting Arizona iced tea Kirsten Cinema?
I mean, it's the party problem.
Becky
it's not Cinema Match.
Becky with the blonde hair, Karen with the kerchief.
I don't think we should be talking about her like this while she's on vacation. I think
she doesn't owe you anything, Pascal. She doesn't owe you anything.
Kirsten, Joe Manchin, I can understand. He's old, crusty West Virginia senator, been there for a while, whatever. Okay, he's, he kind of looks like Dracula's half cousin. I get that.
Fuck.
Karen with the kerchief, Becky with the blonde hair, Arizona iced tea Kirsten Cinema is putting the gum in the works for real.
But I think that it's like in part ways, like, she's reminded Joe Biden of who he used to be in a sense. Ooh. In like a lot of ways, like this, like Joe Biden is fine with any senator doing anything as long as they do it with decorum. Why? That's all they give a fuck about. He's called Mitch McConnell his friend multiple times. And literally they'll go to Mitch McConnell, like, hey, Joe Biden said nice things about you. And he McConnell be like, yeah, he can eat shit. Mm-hmm. And that just happens over and over and over again. And that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. As long as they do it with decorum, Joe Biden's going to say the Senate is one of the greatest legislative bodies to ever exist in the world. They will never get past it. They don't give a shit about whatever.
Kirsten Cinema is taking Instagram pictures, drinking sangria with a ring saying "fuck off" on it.
Yeah,
he doesn't see that shit.
She's fucking edgy, right?
I mean, she's pretty. I have to say, there's a little bit of respect that I have for just being just such a horrible person, and really embracing it. But, it's crazy all the shit with Cinema, because remember that was the Joe Biden promise, that he knows the Senate. Joe Biden is a Senate boy, and he can make stuff happen in the Senate. And yeah, I think Pascal's 100% right. He's getting outflanked by fucking Kirsten Cinema. It's hilarious. But what are they going to do? They can't let out the left flank against her. They don't want that monster out of the bag, right? They can't pressure her. The Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, has the nut jobs and the crazy right wingers. If you stop towing the line, we're going to let, Ted Cruz come around with a bunch of just complete, wackos, and we're going to kick you out of office. The Democratic Party doesn't have that because, as y'all make the point all the time, their function right now is to make sure that there is no left wing opposition, so they can never let out a left wing attack.
Yeah, let's send Kamala Harris down.
Send Kamala Harris down to
And this is the thing, Cinema, she's all zesty with the opposition. She's like, no.
Some of these pictures that came out from the the press conference with the bipartisan group of senators. I mean, it's comical. It's comical.
What
But
was
at the end
going
of the
on
day,
there?
I watched that press conference. I don't know. She is absolutely aloof. You know, a lot of her, even her talking voice was like she goes like, oh yeah, and like Susan Collins has been losing sleep. She said Susan Collins has been losing sleep over this bipartisan bill, but you look fabulous, Susan. You know, and it's just like, what the fuck is going on? What's happening?
She's a total attention seeker. Like, you know, like in terms of Kirsten Sinema, she is an absolutely sociopathic attention seeker who love, you know, sometimes politics comes down to the personal disposition of a
But do you guys know this book?
You just like talk about switching gears, man. You popped the clutch or what?
No,
that's Kirsten Sinema's book.
Sinema's book, Who Must Die in the Rwanda Genocide.
Get out of here. Stop it. She wrote that?
She wrote that.
She's an academic.
Yo, she got like 5 degrees from like 6 mediocre universities. I'm like, yeah, I was like, wow.
Okay, people keep asking me about this. I'm just going to address this real quick. So I don't watch Bill Maher because I don't think he's funny. And I never have thought he's funny. And I watched a lot of fucking shitty stand-up comedy because I enjoy shitty stand-up comedy. And the fact that him and Eric Adams were on the same show, not on my radar. I'm not saying it to diss whoever's saying, do we see it? I'm not saying this isn't a diss. I'm just letting you know that's unless Marcus watches that shit.
I don't watch.
Let me tell you something about Bill Maher. Let me tell you something from y'all who are not from the Northeast, right? This is from my boys who are from New Jersey. And I talked to them about Bill Maher. People are like, oh, Bill Maher is a liberal. They're like, Bill Maher is a Democrat from New Jersey. Do you know what that means for everyone else? He's a Republican.
The last politician to switch parties from the Democrats to the Republicans was a House member from New Jersey. Nice. That was like 3-4 years ago.
Bill Maher was always a douche, though. You know, that's the thing. Yeah, people used to think of him as a liberal.
I'm from New York. Let me tell you about New Jersey. New Jersey is the state that I like exists growing up in New York because it makes me at least have the illusion that New York is racially progressive.
Okay. You know, I got hate mail about Bill Maher. Like when I was talking about Michael on the Majority Report, I mentioned Bill Maher. Michael used to make fun of Bill Maher and say how he wanted to be like
take his show.
Take his show. He wanted to take.
I don't want to defend R from anything, but nobody likes Bill Maher on our shows. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, Bill Maher.
But this guy, I got an email to my university account with a guy going, like, how dare you? Like, you're the reason the left is failing because I insulted Bill Maher on Majority Report, which that possibly the
Gene, you with 1,500 followers on Twitter is the reason why
the left is exactly like Bill Maher attacks. But you know it's interesting that Bill Maher's
greatest intellectual claim to fame is that he's a mediocre white guy who got into an Ivy League safety school. That's basically it.
Wow. You are just
well, you know, but he used to be. I mean, it shows you how far American politics has come because he used to be in the aughts. He was seen as a liberal. Now, a lot of people see him as right wing. The truth is, he hasn't changed. He's always been a wanker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they said Eric Adams, and we haven't talked too much about Eric Adams. We talked kind of about the space that he exists in, where he's very pro police. And there is a faction of a lot of people in certain neighborhoods, mine included, that are afraid of what happens when you defund the police and there's no one there to help them when they really need help.
You know, let me tell you how much contempt I have for Bill Maher. Let me tell you who Bill Maher is. Bill Maher is the obnoxious white ethnic guy that I knew in New York tri-state area who prides himself on the fact that he's dated black chicks and smokes weed with rappers. That's who Bill Maher is.
Sounds like Quentin Tarantino. Same
guy, except one's from the West Coast and one's from Jersey.
But I don't know what Eric Adams could have said that would be shocking.
I guarantee I already know what, like, it was them. You know, Bill Maher makes a joke about, you know,
N-word?
lefties and somewhat, and then like talk about defund the police isn't serious, and then cue up Eric Adams and whatever his fucking bullshit.
Are you guys saying that Eric Adams was on Bill Maher's show last night?
Yeah, that's what we've been saying.
Yes, that's what the whole thing was about.
Get the video. Get the video. I gotta watch it. I gotta see it.
Matt, do you have a clip?
This cat is made. This guy's made from my
I
kids.
feel like because of what you do in general, you probably just have that shit.
You got the clip.
No, it's the weekend. I'm not clipping.
Pause it.
Hold on, let me find a clip and get my channel demonetized. Hold on.
And
Mars tough on that. You might get a strike for that.
It will. You know what? HBO's been pretty good about removing shit.
No,
but-
don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. We don't want to see his ugly face.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with it. Dude, we just got a hit the other day, man.
Super annoying.
Did you? That shit sucks, man. You got to fight it and dispute it and wait.
They didn't accept any of our
They
arguments.
rejected it like in 10 minutes. They're like, no.
Yeah. It was the worst one because it wasn't just like a copyright violation.
Mhm.
We got flagged for medical misinformation.
Because we were making
wow.
fun of Will Witt, a PragerU spokesperson, saying that China made the virus. Sorry,
Don't say this, man.
I can't even say this. This is so dangerous. Yeah.
It made
he
me
was
so
saying
mad 'cause
bad
it's like,
things
yeah, exactly. Like
that we
they just have a
completely disagree
robot
with.
out there, just like searching for certain phrases. I would even say it, but I don't want to say it because I know exactly what.
Yeah,
it was.
we might as well just start
I've
playing.
been workshopping an Alex Jones thing. It's not that good, but I think I definitely said something there that's what got us.
Just so people know, like there's certain clips that I take, and sometimes you see these videos, and like Gene and Pascal, like, why did you do that to the thing? It's like I'm trying to alter it so much where the algorithm doesn't see it. Then if the algorithm does find it, then of course I have to dispute it. More often than not, we win these disputes. I shouldn't say winner. They go in our favor for fair use. I will tell you who has not been cool. The BBC has not been cool.
Yeah, they're bad.
And right now, the Chris Rock clip that I used, and only the first 30 seconds of it.
Wow.
The niggas
the,
who are using black people joke. Apparently, Chris Rock's people or Universal, whoever owns it.
Listen, I'm not. I love all our viewers, and I don't take it personally. If you're from Jersey, I don't want you to think I'm crapping on it. But man, I'll be very. Listen, I grew up in New York City during the Koch years in the '80s. I've got some PTSD from northeastern white ethnics. I'm sorry, don't take it personally. I'm being very candid. Let me tell you where I went to high school. I went to a Catholic high school in New York City, right? All right, a lot of paisans in my high school. Let me be even more. Let me give you my younger brother, who's 4 years younger than me, went to my high school, right? In his high school graduating class was John Gotti's son. Like, no bullshit.
Jesus Christ.
So these are the kind of paisans I was going to high school with in the 80s. In the 80s, I'm talking about Yusuf Hawkins, Howard Beach, Benson Hurst.
Now, speaking of paisans, the Cuomo clip where he had on the restaurant owner.
It's like you failed.
Like, yeah, it's like you hesitated. You're done. It's like you failed. It's like one of the most amazing things. And like, and I don't know, we bring up like Bill Maher, like Jon Stewart or whatever. It was like there's this is completely failed. Where it's like the Bill Maher, Jon Stewart like idea and or model. That's like most of what like quote unquote like cable news is just like attached to my identity, and then like I'll like talk in periphery of some things that may or may not be important, and then like in the middle of it you've got on this like, hey, what are you doing over here? I'm running my restaurant over here. Just like, what the fuck is going on?
It's not as bad as MSNBC. They have that guy
That's because
Ari
MSNBC
Melba.
is full of it's Negro liberals.
I was just talking shit about Ari Melba yesterday
with his rapper stuff.
Ari
Melba.
I hate it.
Bro, it's poetry.
Listen.
It's poetry.
It's just like it's so annoying to sit there like
I'm gonna be
all that shit.
I'm gonna be frank and a little crass. Okay, MSNBC is Ivy League Negroes and Ivy League Jewish folk. That's basically MSNBC. All right, nice liberal, Negro liberals,
Now
neoliberals.
we're anti-Semitic. Thanks a lot.
I'm not in it. Everything's fine. Everything's cool. Everyone gets along. They love Obama. That's wonderful. That's MSNBC. That's fantasy land.
Dude, that stuff is
That's
wild.
true.
I mean, I was with my girlfriend's family, and they watched a decent amount of like MSNBC and CNN. And I'll be honest, I don't watch any of that stuff. So it was very frightening, honestly, to just have that on the background constantly. Not just because the politics are bad, but it's just like, man, this is an insane way to view the world.
Yeah, you have to point out, I think Pascal's right to point out foreground the Ivy League thing, and you look at any editorial board in a major newspaper in this country, they'll be the majority by far.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Grads.
And I'll tell you how crazy, and we've mentioned this on the show before. When the Cuba protest broke out, I kid you not, the Jason Johnson fellow who was filling in for Joanne Reed brought on an assistant professor from somewhere in America who literally said that the protests in Cuba were intersectional protests led by Afro-Caribbeans, and that Marco Rubio was actually supporting the regime's line because in Cuba you're not allowed to teach critical race theory. Utter insanity.
Oh my
I'm not joking. I'm not
God.
exaggerating. This is for real. This is the. It was
I
like.
mean,
it was like.
I want to address something. People are like, "Oh my God, you said Jewish." I just said it because the only person that brought that up is Gene Bajlan mentioned someone else that I really despise, who gets on my nerves, who was on MSNBC, which is Ari Melber, who believes that he owns every Wu-Tang Clan album in life and knows every rap song forever, all day. I mean,
Who
this
green lighted this? That's
this
my question.
cat, this cat noise.
Like just protect your neck, his intro music.
Let me tell you why. This is Pascal that's letting it out today. Let me tell you why Ari Melba bothers me in a different way than Bill Maher. All right, because Ari Melber is that smug, annoying white liberal who will tell you that he knows more about the origins of Kwanzaa than you do, and will try to check you on your racial insensitivity when you tell him why you don't like XYZ aspect of, jazz or some other aspect of Black culture.
Yeah, when
That
Ari
motherfucker is really annoying.
When Ari Melber finds out
Jesus.
you haven't listened to the
No, let me give you an example. When Django Unchained, Django Unchained was a jacked up movie, right? When Django Unchained came out, and I'll admit something publicly. I like Django Unchained, and I'll be very honest. I like Django Unchained because I liked watching the white people get my mouth.
I knew it.
I did.
He was loud as fucking.
When Django Unchained came out, I put on Twitter, I love Django Unchained. It was like watching Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines with a 6-shooter. I was like, this is good. I love Django Unchained. Ari Melber is asked about Django Unchained on MSNBC. I watched it. First of all, if you remember the reaction a lot of Black folk had when they first saw Django Unchained, it was very popular. Remember Dick Gregory said he went to see it 12 times. He said,
Dick
"I've never
Gregory
saw a
was
movie."
fucking insane at the end of his life, and said crazy
Dick
shit.
Gregory said, "I've never seen a movie that liberated me so much than Django Unchained." He loved
wow.
that
I mean,
movie.
the nigga lived to the 70s. He could go back and watch any of them movies where the man is at the end.
So Ari Melber is asked on MSNBC. By the way, Michael Eric Dyson was like, "Oh, this is a great movie. It's a story about redemptive Black masculinity. This is awesome." Ari Melber was like, "This movie is terrible. I can't understand why we can celebrate this kind of stuff. I tweeted Ari Melber.
bro.
I was finding the tweet. I tweeted him. I said, "What makes you think you have the cultural competency to even talk about this movie?"
He's got the lost album of Wu-Tang. That's
He
what.
knows how to rap.
Someone saw that tweet, and immediately in the next segment after commercial, they said, "I don't think Ari Melber has the cultural competency to appreciate this movie." I was like, someone read my tweet.
Well, people stealing. People don't get. Pascal's too hot for MSNBC.
No, I'm not. Listen, there are a lot of problems with Django Unchained, but I was offended by the fact that this motherfucker who believes that he has like the inside baseball on all of Eric B. and Rakim's albums is telling people why they shouldn't like Django Unchained. Like, that cat offends me so much.
Apparently.
Where was he?
I hate him a
on
lot.
the Now list?
Yeah,
Is he above Joanne Reed or below Joanne Reed?
On the Mount list.
Whisperer.
The Black Whisperer. That's it.
Oh no.
I never heard of this motherfucker. I don't know who he is. I don't watch MSNBC. That's
That's smart.
This is the guy. This is the guy who
hang out with him.
listen, Jason, let me tell you. You want to know who Ari Melba is? Ari Melba is the guy on MSNBC who invites 50 Cent on to talk about politics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Poor Ari Melba. Yeah, so is he above or below Joanne Reed on the Now table? Like, where does he go?
Man, that's a rough call, man. That's
a color chart like terror warnings. Is he threat level midnight? I wanted to address the super chat. And then I know our guest, it's late. Dave's over there staring at hot meat.
I literally am.
Got to go down to the playground and play some basketball and do some white men can't jump. Fucking young inner city youth. Hey, fellas.
Like Woody Harrelson's
6'4" white guy that can dunk. And these silly shorts.
If I was 6'4", I could have dunked.
If you hang out with Coach Will,
wait, someone said something. Andy, he said those liberals have sex with black women just for cultural currency. Let's talk about Tamron Hall.
Pascal, I'm trying to wrap the show up. It's 2 minutes left. You want to yell at? You can't yell at every white person on MSNBC in one show. That's a series.
Yeah, that's a series.
You got your Ari Melber off, and you win.
You could pick someone else next time.
I'll read this super chat and I will direct it to the meat smoker and the shooter. Basketball shooter.
I was talking to Pascal for a second.
How do we organize the working class when we are so atomized? I'm sorry that this question is coming after all this silly shit. How do we organize a working class when we are so atomized and jobs are so precarious when so much of the U.S. economy is in the service sector? This is a great question. I will pivot to David Griscom.
Well, I mean, we just need more news hosts who are quoting Wu-Tang. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is a big one. I think it's important to realize that if I were to do this in a kind of general way first, like, I think it's important for people to realize that neoliberalism was an assault on the social. There's a lot of other things too, but community organizations have just been decimated. Like people being able to hang out and spend time together without spending money. That's something that's been eradicated. And you got to start trying to organize those kind of things. I think the number one thing you should do is join a socialist organization or a union, right? But another thing to think about is okay, how can I be a member of my community? How can I rebuild those bonds? Because they have been decimated, and there's a reason they did. I mean, that's like Margaret Thatcher. She's like, there is no society, right? There's individuals and families, right? Or something along that line, right? And that's been a huge victory of neoliberalism that I don't think gets talked about enough. So to break atomization, be social, man. Is sort of my general answer to that. And you have to join organizations at the end of the day. because you can have all the right opinions. You can be the perfect little Maoist in your room, and know exactly what needs to be done. But if you don't have friends, one, it's going to be very dreary, and two, you're not going to be able to do anything.
Big truth.
I think it's well said, David.
Wait, hold on.
Maoist in the room, Maoist in the room, Maoist in the room. My girl wants the Maoist in the room, Maoist in the room, Maoist in the room.
Oh my god!
Shout out, David. That was actually, I appreciate everything you said. I just want you to know that while you were saying this wonderful shit, the people in the chat, which unfortunately I should turn off, are making me laugh so fucking hard.
They're having fun, man.
God,
I think can we commission like who was it, Manuel Miranda to write the play of Maoist in the room?
No, he should do one on that. He should do
Maoist
one
in the room, Maoist in the room, Maoist in the room.
Pascal, you should hire him to do
Party all the party. My girl wants to party. My girl wants the Maoist in the room. Maoist in the room. Maoist in the room. My girl wants the Maoist in the room.
Someone's got to make this.
Matt and David, next time you guys get some like bullshit fucking tweet from some like Uber tanky, just remember Pascal singing Maoist in the room.
Yeah, I've been singing that for a while at the bottom.
You should turn that into one of these popular musicals, like Marcus says, like Lin-Manuel Miranda can write a musical about the Haitian Revolution.
Well, he's doing a Cuba thing too. I know we're rolling out, so we don't need to introduce too many things, but he's doing a Cuba thing. Y'all seen this?
No, really?
Yeah, he's writing a thing about Cuba. Yeah, about like what life is like in Cuba, which you know is just going to be reactionary trash.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we might need to do Maoist in the room.
Yeah.
Maoist in the room.
It's a great. No, we should actually sing
Morrison,
music to that.
the dude to write the play that was anti Hamilton, wasn't it Toni Morrison?
I think so. Yeah.
The anti-Hamilton play.
This shit sucks so much. I'm raising money to stop it. Like, that's awesome, man. Like, it's enough to just criticize it publicly, be like, no, I'm raising money to just like squash this shit.
Like, did you guys watch Blind Spotting, the dude's movie from Hamilton?
Blind Spotting?
Blind Spotting actually was filmed at the same time as Boots was filming Sorry to Bother You. Also,
no, I didn't see Blind Spotting.
It's all right. There's parts of it that I actually really like, you know, being from the area. I did by my house or where I was living at the time.
Hamilton was such a psyop, man. It was so smooth when he did that.
I think, I mean, like, we actually watched Hamilton for our little special podcast we do.
Oh, wow.
And it took us 2 episodes to do it because I was just angry and ranting.
Is that when you called me up about that shit? You were like, man, the hip hop in this shit is just not good.
It's bad. I'm telling you, like, it's like if you go to Broadway, right? You go to Broadway, what's gonna be good? The singing and the dancing. They gotta do all this shit at once. It's gonna be 10 out of 10.
That's what it is. It's
but then when they said hip hop, they're like, hey, as long as you rhyme car with bar and far, get the fuck in here, you're good.
But that's what it is, though, man. That it is. It's the kind of hip hop that would be invented by a suburban suburban high school music teacher.
Well, isn't Lin-Manuel's dad like a State Department guy or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
100% psyop then, because that was just pure propaganda.
Remember when they showed up? Oh hell yeah! When they showed up, Mike Pence. What a moment!
That was like that was.
That was like the battle of the
this guy's
balls
like,
for liberals.
in celebration of the first black president, we're going to do a musical about the racist founding fathers singing hip hop, and they'll be black. Everyone will love it.
And the thing that really pissed me off is that they have the song in there called the 10 Dual Commandments. And it's like it's a complete rip off of a Biggie song. And it's like the amount of disrespect that you have to do that in New York. Like, you're gonna do that in New York. Like,
Well, you know how many neoliberals love Hamilton, man?
So many
People love
like,
that
but that's the
man.
thing is like the 10 crack commandments. That seems
Yeah, shout out to
too
Ismail.
much.
No
It's too
relation to
much.
Ismail Reed has been destroying Hamilton, destroying. Ismail Reed is a famous African American writer, poet, and literary figure. He's kind of radical, more kind of black nationalist, but he's a good writer. He hates Hamilton, been destroying it.
He wrote the play.
He wrote a play in rebuttal.
Ishmael Reed is also quoted as being very, very tough on crime in the late 80s and wanted longer sentences for drug offenders.
He's out. Ismail Reed is in your hood. He's from your hood.
Yep. He will be in the next part of the upcoming video essay series we're doing for Zero Books called The Dispatch.
Now that we probably
Did Janice Graham give us a super chat?
Yeah.
Oh, what's the? Let me see that. Let me see that super chat. For peer character holding his belly, laughing out loud. Oh, who's peer character?
I think that's like a button they can do on YouTube, and they just translated it.
So were we gonna go back to the super chat and like go through, because I know that like David answered the super chat question, and I don't know if we were trying to go through all of us like answering that question.
I don't know,
wrapped up, but it was a great answer. But we had like trailed off into like
David
I remember
and for all Negroes for the next 7 minutes.
Oh, by the way, just listen to Our Common Ground with Janice P. Graham tonight. She's doing a dedication to Glenn Ford, editor-in-chief in Black Agenda Report, who passed away a couple of days ago. So check out Our Common Ground with Janice Graham. I wish we had a link because we would share it. Do we have a link? We don't have a link. Janice, can you give us a link? Send us a link. Do something. I don't know. Our Common Ground on Block Chart Radio.
And also, I want to give a shout out to Sarah because it is our wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Shout out to Sarah.
We've been married for 8 years. And
put up with you for 8 years. Wow.
She's put up with me for more than 8 years. But yes, we've been married for 8 years. But we found someone to dump the child off for a good 3.5 hours. A shout out to Craig for helping me out with that.
What's up, Craig?
I'm gonna go see a movie. But I don't know whether to see Snake Eyes or The Green Knight. It's
Snake Eyes.
I want to see
Dude, I saw Pig the other day, which was really good.
Oh, with what's his name?
Nicolas Cage. Wild movie, very funny, strange film, but it was good.
See Tomorrow World. So romantic. On his 8th wedding anniversary, he's taking his wife to see a movie called Snake Eyes.
That's the only movies that you can watch in Springfield. It's Snake Eyes, The Green Knight, or Black Widow. People in Springfield don't want to watch no artistic movie. Give them Snake Eyes, baby. I want some Snake Eyes. And we're gonna have some barbecue after that. And it's like, hell yeah,
there you go.
Wife to Golden Corral when the movie's over, so I don't know.
Baby, I'm gonna take you to Golden Corral every Friday if you stay married.
I love
to me.
Golden Corral.
Oh man,
don't start causing fights, Gene.
No, I'm a big advocate of Golden Corral. That's the biggest
we need a Golden Corral theater. Elmer Draft House.
It would smell like hot farts. When you hear that music, that means that we're wrapping shit up. I want to thank our Left Reckoning brothers. I'm glad this simulcast type thing worked out. A lot more people can see the show. Thank you, Marcus, for coming on late. Gene, thank you for filling in for Marcus, even though we didn't know he was coming. Pascal, thank you for your song. We have to find a way to get a button on the board. I'll leave you guys today, listening or watching the show, with a little bit of our video essay that's out right now on Zero Books. The Forgotten Huey Newton is taken from a Cedric Johnson long-form essay in Dissent about an era of Huey Newton's time we don't talk about, and kind of dispelling the myth of the ghetto being an internal colony, which will be part 2. This is going to be a multi-part series that we're doing on Zero Books. And you guys enjoy that, right?
I keep telling Jason he needs to make house music, man. He's got the skills.
Yeah.
Make all kinds of music over here. I'm trying to make country music. I gave Bruce a shout out on an audio only podcast. I was trying to make some country music, but it just ended up sounding like Slayer playing country. So that's what happens when I make country music. Or this. You get like this. This is what country music would sound like if it came out of Oakland.
The beat is tight.
So thank you guys, and watch this, and we're out.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Carl T. Rowan. As the new director of the United States Information Agency, I have the privilege to present to you a dramatic document.